Hey guys, it's Roger. Welcome back to another 202 Film Collective camera comparison video. And as you can see by the background, that it is currently cherry blossom season in DC. And we happen to find the only tree that does not have 50 tourists standing in front of. To talk to you about the Plaubel Makina 6.7. And if you have a problem like me, which is too many Plaubels, stay tuned and we're going to let you know what the difference is between the different models of the Plaubel Makina 6.7. Alright, so here we have all three models lined up. We're going to start off with the first model, the Makina 6.7. Now, if you guys have seen our Hasselblad X-Pan versus Fujifilm TX1 comparison, you'll know that this is not going to be a full camera review. We're only going to be highlighting the differences between these three models. So starting off with the 6.7, you'll first notice that the finish on the top is smooth. Okay, now that's different from the other two, which has this ribbed finish to it. Now, I personally really like this camera design. In fact, it's actually one of my favorite camera designs of all time. It's super minimalist and Bauhaus. If you look at the font, this is actually, it looks like Helvetica. So this means that they actually used this font decades before Apple ever did. It's just so modern and just timeless. However, one problem that people have found is that this is actually kind of slippery, right? And so, trying to hand hold this, especially using it one-handed to both focus and fire, can be a little bit of a problem, especially if your hands get a little sweaty. The other thing you'll notice physically is that the camera lugs are more of these traditional, just typical circular lugs on here. And the cable release for the shutter is on the side of the camera. But other than that, that's pretty much the main differences of the Makina 6.7. So when they came out, when the original 6.7 was a huge hit, they decided, why don't we make a wide version of the camera, okay? And as you can see here, they did address the issue of the slippery surface by adding this rib texture, which does make it significantly easier to handle, all right? Especially even just one-handed like this. The second thing they did was also, they addressed that the original focusing knob was just sort of this hard plastic, and I guess it could also be a little bit hard to turn. So on the updated wide 6.7, they added this textured rubber wheel, so it makes it a little bit easier to operate one-handed. Another thing that you'll notice is might be kind of hard to see, but this front face of the lens actually is smaller on the wide version than the original 6.7. Notice how the font is much smaller on the wide compared to 6.7, and also another thing that is problematic is that they actually changed the filter threads on the wide to be different from what it was originally. So the original Plaubel had 58mm filter threads, and as you can see, this is actually not going to fit. I believe the new wide 6.7 uses 62mm filter threads. So that means that your filters are not going to be interchangeable, unfortunately. So moving on to the later release of the 670. Okay, so the 670 was a direct upgrade of the original 6.7. Now, one of the biggest changes that they made, as you can see again, they stuck with the wide 6.7's ribbed finish, again making it easier to hold with one hand. I have on here the optional grip, but I'll take it off just so you can see that indeed it is different this way. Another big difference, mechanically speaking, is actually, as you can see from the top, you actually now have a selector between 120 and 220 film. The reason why is because they added the ability to support 220 film on the 670. And then the other difference, where I can't really demonstrate to you right now, but they changed it from a single stroke to a double stroke on the 670. Now this is probably the thing that is going to be the biggest change in terms of operation if you're going from a 6.7 to a 670, because again, if you're used to using the 6.7, you're going to just do a single stroke to advance your film. But on the 670, if just a single stroke, you'll be able to fire it afterwards. But if you do that, you'll realize that you've just shot half a frame. In fact, all of your frames will end up being one long parent panorama of double exposures. So that's one thing to note, especially if you're like me and you tend to carry around both the wide, which again is also a single stroke, and the 670. double stroke, meaning that you're going to have to really make sure that you advance the film properly with 6.7. Otherwise, again, like I said before, you'll end up with a bunch of double exposures. And considering that the issue with the original 6.7 was that the side is really slippery, if you're interested in getting the optional grip for the Plaubel, which by the way, they do fit all three models, so you just need to get one for all three, I would definitely recommend getting the grip because this makes holding the original 6.7 so much easier. So with the grip, you're going to have much better peace of mind. You're not going to have to worry about accidentally dropping this camera because of how smooth the surface is. Another change they made for the wide and the 670 is that instead of the traditional round strap holes, they added these sort of rectangular pegged holes, so you can actually use these clip loops instead. The last piece of added functionality for the 670 is that they added a dedicated hot shoe. Now, as you can see here, for the original wide 6.7 and the 6.7, these are actually cold shoes. You would actually have to attach your flash to the lens mechanism itself when the bellows are extended. And one more thing about the 670, I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, but I feel like the release button, in order to either expand or collapse the bellows, is actually much harder to depress than it is on the other two. Now, that, in my opinion, is actually a good thing, because one thing I did find was that it was actually pretty easy to accidentally release the bellows when you weren't intending to. So again, I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, but I found that in practice it does make it harder to do so accidentally. In my opinion, the Plaubel Makina 6.7, any of the variants, they're honestly probably the best rangefinders ever made, especially, you know, if you want to shoot 6.7 medium format. As you can see, there really aren't that many differences between the three models. I truly believe that any of these that you pick up are going to be fantastic. But if you were really trying to decide between, let's say, like the 6.7 versus the 670, hopefully now you know the differences, and that can help you out in your decision making. Thanks again for watching. This has been another 202 Film Collective camera comparison, and we'll see you next time.